Now, Mr. Inibehe Effiong, a rights activist and lawyer, he joins us virtually from Lagos to give us some legal opinion on this one. Thank you so much, Mr. Effiong, for joining us tonight. Give us a sense of what this meant. Altogether, from what we understand that the PCR wanted to do with Abba Kyari as a staff and personnel of the police force, the issue of extradition, the AG said, is not off the table as far as the investigation is concerned. When it's concluded, that will be decided. But from what we know, the videotape played today by the NDLEA and the subsequent arrest by the police first and then handed over to the NDLEA give us a sense of the legality of all of this matter.
Thank you and good evening. Now, in the light of the developments, the arrest of Abba Kyari in connection with his alleged involvement or complicity in narcotics, the case of Abba Kyari has now been raised to 3 pedestals. The first is that there is the aspect of the case legally that relates to his conduct as a police officer, which is what the Police Service Commission has caused investigation to be carried into. That investigation is ongoing. Now, the second aspect of the matter is the one relating to the case against him in the United States as formulated by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Now, that requires necessarily that the United States government should request the Nigerian government to extradite him. So the process of extradition, to my mind, has not formally commenced because it does not appear that there is any application in court regarding that. The case in court that I am aware of is one where some individuals or certain organizations went to court to stop his extradition. But I am not aware that the Attorney General of the Federation has made an application to the court for an order to extradite him. Now, the third aspect is now the one that has just arisen, arising from his complicity, as stated by the NDLEA, in narcotics. What this implies legally is that within the purview of this case, the police must determine the question of whether Abba Kyari's conduct satisfied the requirements and the ethical standard of a police officer, whether he had violated the police regulations, the police that governs the conduct of internally orderly room trial. The second aspect that relates to the FBI, for disciplinary action to be taken in terms of prosecution, Abba Kyari has to be extradited to the US, where he has to face trial. Now, the NDLA having now made allegations against him, with the evidence that we have seen so far, it means that he must also be made to face trial as prosecuted by NDLA for involvement in drugs. The question now becomes which one takes precedence. Ordinarily, I do not understand why the case of Abba Kyari by the Police Service Commission is still being investigated. This should have been concluded long ago. The question of his extradition should have been determined before now. Now that the NDLA has added another aspect to what has become the litany of criminal allegations against Abba Kyari, it therefore begs the question, will this slow his extradition or not? My perception is that if the federal government is really honest about this case, the starting point is for the Police Service Commission to immediately conclude the investigation against Abba Kyari and apportion punishment accordingly. And I say, as a minimum, in the light of the evidence that we have seen from the FBI having reviewed the evidence against him, at a minimum, he has to be dismissed from the police. There is no other way about it. When that is done, through the orderly room trial, the police will now determine, in consonance with the Attorney General of the Federation, whether he should be extradited to the US to face trial for his involvement in the Hush Puppy case, or whether the NDLA should prosecute him first. Because I don't think he can stand trial in 2 jurisdictions concurrently. So I am hoping that, I am not being a devil's advocate, but I am hoping that the federal government will not use Abba Kyari's indictment by the NDLA as an excuse for not subjecting him to the process of extradition. What should be done is this. Since the NDLA has now come out to say they have a case against Abba Kyari, let the charge be filed against him, and let the AGF contact the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Justice Department and set a timeline within which both cases can be determined. If he's tried and convicted in Nigeria or first tried and convicted in the US, they can now determine where he should serve his sentence. That is the event of conviction, because he's still legally presumed innocent. But if he's convicted in the US may as well...
Let's get some clarity.
And serve his term.
Let's get some clarity, Mr. Effiong. One of the things I'd like you to clarify under the law, I mean, in our legal system, any man is presumed innocent until he's proven guilty, especially when it involves criminal matters. And you are asking that the police should dismiss Mr. Kyari when a prima facie case has not been leveled against, because this is, they said the investigation is still on. The NDLA has not concluded his own issue, which just came up. Now the police says that there's still ongoing investigation on his matter. How then will they, on what basis will they be able to dismiss him?
Legally speaking, and without any fear of contradiction, the constitutional presumption of innocence, as guaranteed under Section 36, subsection 5 of the Constitution, is inapplicable in respect of the investigation by the Police Service Commission. That is because the Police Service Commission is not trying Abba Kyari for a criminal offense. That is only applicable in respect of trial in regular courts. What the Police Service Commission is investigating, because the Police Service Commission is not a court of record under Section 6 of the Constitution. It is not imbued with judicial powers. It is not prosecuting Abba Kyari per se. This is just an orderly room trial. In other words, an internal disciplinary process. They do not need proof beyond reasonable doubt to establish complicity. On the basis of what we have seen, on the basis of even the preliminary findings as reported in the media, on the basis of the FBI reports that I have reviewed, even on the basis of ethics, on the basis of professionalism, there is no way Abba Kyari can be exonerated. And I say that without any fear. The evidence is clear. He was in contact with Hush Puppy. He received and even sent photographs to him. He received money from Hush Puppy and came up with a flimsy reason that he wanted to give to a tailor. That conduct alone is enough for him to be dismissed. Regarding the criminal dimensions of the case against him, that is where the requirement of proof beyond reasonable doubt arises. So I am saying, in essence, that the police is doing great disservice by foot dragging on this matter. And it is by embarrassing, Mr. Shehu, that the NDLA allegation against Abba Kyari, the case from what we have raised, arose on the 19th of January 2022. While he was under suspension, Abba Kyari was still actively controlling officers in the police. What that shows you is a police force that is thoroughly sick. It's a police office that is bereft of competent leadership. And the IG must also take responsibility for this. How do you have a high profile?
Mr. Effiong, if I may jump in quickly. I saw a legal opinion today of a lawyer asking that Mr. Kyari should be arrested by the police and handed over to the NDLA. That legal opinion and what the lawyer was asking was actually obeyed by the police. If there is an investigation going on, is there anything that the police could do anyways? But the police in this matter had arrested, haven't they done the right thing by arresting him and handing him over to the NDLA?
Mr. Shehu, let us not deceive ourselves. Abba Kyari's case is only a microcosm of the general decay in the police, which even the IGP has attested to. The point is that you have Abba Kyari's case being investigated by the Force Criminal Intelligence and Investigation Bureau. That is the highest investigative unit of the police. Now with a report, which the Police Service Commission found to be that it was not satisfactory. If you have investigation at the apex, at that level, not done thoroughly, It shows that something is wrong with the institution. And why should this drag for too long? Why is this still going on? Why is Abba Kyari's case prolonging? This should have been concluded before now. And why is the federal government not categorical on the question of extradition? Are you saying that there are no people protecting him? If there are no people protecting him, the outcome would have been different. So I expect that.
So let me let me jump in. There are issues that have been raised here on the matter of Mr. Kyari. One of the popular cases that Mr. Kyari was part of was the issue of the popular alleged kidnapper Evans, whose case is in court at the moment. Is there, under the law, in the eye of the law, is there any effect of the situation Abba Kyari is facing right now and the litany of allegations against him? Is there any effect of such on some of the cases that he has led his team to unravel and they are presently in court? Would there be any legal effect on them?
No serious effect, because legally, what the law says is that when investigation is done, any member of the investigation team is a competent witness to testify. All the cases that Abba Kyari was involved in, he was not involved in those cases in isolation. It was a teamwork. So in any of those cases that evidence is required in court, other members of the team can testify. But you know, interestingly, you mentioned the case of Evans. Without prejudice to the proceedings in court, you would have also read that Evans has accused Abba Kyari of extortion. He has accused Abba Kyari of extrajudicial execution. This has not been investigated. And Shehu, this is not the first time there are allegations that are being made against Abba Kyari. And when you have somebody with this baggage being painted before the international community as the model of the Nigerian police, it shows that something is wrong with the police. So you have now a celebrity police officer being exposed in this manner. Let the police have the humility to admit that they have failed to reform that institution. And as I made this point, and I want to emphasize that only the president of Nigeria can reform the police. The National Assembly has done their part through the passage of the Police Act of 2020, through the passage of the Anti-Torture Act of 2011, through the passage of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act of 2015. The executive arm of government has failed. The president promised police reform. Osibanjo even promised police reform as acting president. So what has been done since the answers? Nothing. So when we are talking about Abba Kyari, other policemen as I speak to you are still on the road committing the same atrocity, aiding armed robbers, extorting Nigerians, killing Nigerians. So we need to have a serious conversation as a country. We cannot allow the police that is supposed to fight crime to become a criminal organization. And for that not to happen, for us not to have more of the Abba Kyari's case, we must have a serious conversation about reforming the police. And I give one example on how to go about it. In every state, if you have a police officer accused of extortion, accused of extrajudicial killing, sack the commissioner of police in that state within 24 hours and replace him. What that will do is that the CP of every state will now know that it will be held liable for every infraction under his command. That will now apply to the DPOs. And that chain of responsibility has to rise from the IG to the DPO. But as of today, you have a cycle of impunity in the police. That is why Abba Kyari will have the audacity, after he's on suspension, to still be involved in this kind of matter. That is why he will be so bold on suspension to attend the wedding of the son of the Service Inspector General of Police. We are not fools in this country. These people are taking Nigerians for granted. And that is why the president should not finish his tenure without reforming the police. Any president that is truly serious about changing Nigeria must start from the police. If you don't reform the police, you can not talk about reforming Nigeria. It's as simple as that.
So let me ask this question. It might sound as naive or as simple, but it's not as simple in the end because Nigerians need to get what is happening. An Abba Kyari in uniform being investigated for a criminal offense, now a drug-related offense. What does this mean? Because he's in suspension, but he still assumed that he has the uniform. Now, compared to an Abba Kyari that doesn't have a uniform, is there a difference? Because if he's not in uniform, he's an ordinary citizen. Is the prosecution or in the eye of the law, under the criminal law, does it look different in the eye of the law? A uniform Abba Kyari facing prosecution for alleged crime and Abba Kyari without or in uniform. How does the law see it?
Well, it doesn't really have bearing on the case against him. The point is that since he's still a serving police officer, having not been dismissed, disciplinary actions having not been taken, except for his suspension, the process of internal discipline has to take place. The police have to discipline him internally. But you see, the question you have asked raises an important point. That you have a man who is still serving as a law enforcement agent of a country accused of involvement in narcotics, while still in uniform as a police officer. What that tells you is that something, as I've said, and I've said it repeatedly, we need a surgical operation of the Nigeria police. The Nigeria police force must be put in a theater, and a surgical operation must be carried out, because the situation has become cancerous. But the government is still treating the cancer in the police with Panadol. That is not going to yield any results. Abba Kyari's case is an example of what is going on in this country every day. So let the police save itself of this eternal shame. Let them have the humility to admit that they
before we go on a break, Mr. Effiong, let me ask you quickly. What we have on the ground, NDLA, I assume, has prosecutorial powers on the issue relating to drug, but in the process of prosecuting issues on narcotics, what does the process look like? Will Mr. Kyari be sleeping in their custody? What does the law permit NDLA to do? What is the extent of their powers? Are they going to take him to court? What does the law say about NDLA prosecuting this kind of case?
Of course, I want to say, in fairness, that the chapter 4 of the Constitution is clear on the fundamental right of every citizen, including the right to personal liberty. So now that they have taken him into custody, I would have expected that they would have possibly gone to court to get a remand order, right? Because he's still presumed innocent, to have an order to detain him, or they could have probably filed charges already. Now, the NDLA, as you have rightly said, has prosecutorial powers. He's going to be prosecuted as an ordinary citizen. He does not enjoy immunity by virtue of his membership of the police. The only persons in this country who are immune from prosecution under Section 308 of the Constitution are the president, vice president, governors, and deputy governors. Abba Kyari has to be prosecuted by the NDLA, not the police. The police cannot prosecute cases of narcotics. That is not strictly within their prosecutorial powers. But the point I am making is that that should be done expeditiously in consultation with the FBI, so that Nigerians will not say that this is just some government magic, as Fela would say, to shield him from his case with the FBI. Because the police, interestingly, in their press statement, also accused the NDLA of complicity in this case. I just read the official press statement of the police public relations officer. There are some NDLA officers were also involved, which is reasonable because most times they aid these criminals who are involved in narcotics. So let the NDLA also tell us the extent of complicity of the officers, not only in Abba Kyari's case, but in other cases. But this is the point. At the end of the day, it still boils down to leadership. Somebody has to take responsibility for what is happening. In some serious crimes, even the IG would have been so embarrassed that he would put in his resignation. But when you ask people to resign in Nigeria, it looks as if you are asking them to commit suicide. It's not supposed to be so. The culture of shame.
All right, Mr. Inibehe Effiong, we must leave it at that. Yeah, because we're due for a break. Thank you so much, Mr. Inibehe Effiong, a lawyer and rights activist. Thank you so much for your legal thoughts on this matter. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.